So we'll start our session today by dedicating it to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is the founder Acharya of ISKCON. And we will be starting with chapter 3 today. So, okay, so we will be, the highlighted chapter is not right here. So we will be starting with chapter 3, which is Karma Yoga, which has 43 shlokas. And we are still in the part 1. If you remember, we had split the overall 18 chapters, right? Our acharyas into 18 chapters into 3 main parts. Part 1 was Karma Yoga. The last part, part 3 is Dhyan, and the middle part is Bhakti. Yeah. So we are still in the first part, which comprises of the first 6 chapters, of which we are doing we'll start with the 3rd chapter, which has 43 shlokas. Yeah. Now, in this section, this is the, in this we have divided into, for our ease, into 5 parts. And we will be covering the first 2 parts today. Yeah. So shloka number 1 to 9. Yeah. So, so basically this chapter, the first part talks about Arjuna gets confused, as he always, when we started with Gita, he wanted to go away from the battlefield, right? So he's going to again frame this question to Krishna. He's still in the confusion as whether he should renunciate or perform the action. And then, we see how Krishna, confirms that to Arjuna that indeed Nishkan Karma Yoga for Arjuna to perform that is better for him than renunciation, which is Jnana Yoga. Further sessions, we'll see how Krishna takes us from, the yoga ladder, which we did in chapter 2. So from Karma Kanda to Karma Yoga. And then exclusively talking about Nishkam Karma Yoga and, an example, of Janak Maharaj, which he gives, and himself as well. And in the last section of this chapter, we will see one of the key topics, the greatest enemy, which is lust, how to conquer lust. Yeah. So now just to give a brief about how this chapter will look. Yeah. So like I said, the first 2 verses talk about Arjuna's confusion, whether he should renunciate or whether he should perform the action. Renunciate as in go away from the battlefield and take renunciation. Or, action here for Arjuna is to fight. Yeah. Now, we see in this next section that Krishna explains how renunciation, what is the prerequisite for something called as renunciation. And it is not easy. Krishna says it's difficult. So he is saying, Arjuna, better you perform your duty, prescribed duty, which is fighting. So better you perform action. Yeah. And then we will see that how Krishna again highlights, even if Arjuna is qualified to take renunciation, because he was definitely at that level, right? So, but he should still perform action, and action is, we are talking here about Nishkam Karma Yoga. Yeah? This chapter, or Karma Yoga is Nishkam Karma Yoga. Yeah. And why he should perform Nishkam Karma Yoga is because he should set the right example. And we'll see in due course in further sessions how setting the right example is important, for because people follow the leaders, right? And in the end, the main piece, which is lust, right, which is our greatest enemy. And Arjuna comes up with a question that even after knowing all this, that we have to perform our prescribed duties, but there is something which pulls us sometimes so heavily that even we know that it is not right thing to do. We feel like we are forced to do that, So what is it? He asks. And Krishna then says it's lust. Yeah, it is the greatest enemy, which is not, outside us. It is rather inside us. So it's within. Yeah. So, and how can we conquer this lust within? So we will cover that as well in the last section. And Krishna also highlights what are the sitting places of this lust, where exactly it sits. Yeah. And then so this is the overall, gist of this chapter. Now, because the title of the chapter is Karma Yoga, right? So what is karma? It is very important for us to understand that when we are talking about karma, usually we use the statement, this is our past karma, right? So we refer it more to reaction. But we have to understand when we are talking about karma, it could mean both action and reaction, right? So, and when we several times use the word fruitive action, right? But as a result, right? So even that, it means karma. So karma can be a bit broadened, right? So it can be action or reaction, or performing an action which gets a specific result, right? Which is intended to get a specific, right? Which is called as fruitive action. Yeah. So with that, we start with the first section, which covers the first two verses. Now, before we start with the verses, I would like to just highlight, and this is in the purport of the first shloka, yeah, in the Gita. So Prabhupada has highlighted this. So when Krishna in the past chapter explained, different yoga system, right? We went through the ladder, we went, which is within the ladder, the sinful actions. Then when we went from Sakam, we went, Nishkam. Then we saw Sankhya Yoga or Jnana Yoga. We saw several yoga systems, right? So now why is again Arjuna confused, right? So that might come as in our mind, because when we go through the second chapter, we are going and we feel that from where is this again arised, right? So this is the shloka, where Arjuna is really picking up. Now we have to understand the mindset of Arjuna, right? So Arjuna did not want to fight. So he was looking for, some things from Krishna where he can highlight, okay, you are saying this and you are also saying this. So he's particularly, keen to look at the verses where, which highlights not to fight, right? So, and there is a confusion here, because when we see 2.49, right, this shloka was like, Durena hi avaram karma, buddhi yoga dhananjaya, right? So Krishna was saying, Durena hi avaram karma. So Krishna was trying to say that keep away. Durena means keep, away. Avaram karma. Avaram karma is all the abominable activities, right? So Krishna was saying, keep all the abominable activities far from you, Arjuna, distant from you, right? Buddhi yoga dhananjaya means utilizing your buddhi yoga, right? So he was telling Arjuna that keep all these activities, away from you by using your intelligence. And in that consciousness, surrender to Krishna, right? Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers, right? We learned this as well, right? So now, what is the confusion here? Here, the main thing is that because Arjuna was inclined not to fight, his definition of abominable activities was to fight. Fighting is an abominable activity. And intelligence is to go off and not fight, right? So we have to understand that in this verse, actually Krishna meant, right, to establish the superiority of Nishkam Karma. That is, act per the Krishna's advice, right, over the Karma Kanda, which is fruitive results. However, Arjuna thought that fighting itself is an abominable activity, right? And that Buddhi Yoga or intelligence, what does that mean? Is to just renunciate. So there is a difference in understanding of what is renunciation, what Krishna was trying to say versus what Arjuna was speaking, right? So, but Krishna's urging him to fight seemed contradictory to him. Hence, he was asking. So Krishna was saying, keep all abominable activities away, means, why are you thinking not to fight? That is abominable for you as a Kshatriya. We also saw what were the responsibility of him as a leadership position, as a Kshatriya. So he not fighting would be abominable. But Arjuna was thinking, fighting is itself an abominable activity, right? And when we talk about renunciation, it's renunciation from the fruits of action, not renunciation from the karma, right? It is renunciation from not having renunciation attitude towards the results. That is nishkam, right? No, not having the expectation of results and performing the action, right? So this is the background as why Arjuna is confused. Yeah. So now the first verse is where Arjuna asks. So would maybe I can call out Biswaji, if I can go with the name list. So will you be
Yeah.
able to read the Sanskrit verse and the first English?
Okay. Yeah. Uh, Arjuno Vacha जियासि चेत् कर्मणस्ते मता बुद्धि जनार्दन तत्किं कर्मणि घोरे मां नियोजयसि केशव. Arjuna Uvacha. Uh, okay, Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Kesava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare? If you think that intelligence is better than the fruitive work, my intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be. Okay, I read the second
That's
part of
fine.
Jyoti.
That's fine.
Okay, yeah, the first part, which will be most beneficial for me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for reading the Sanskrit Manas. Thank you. So, um, so yeah, here, like I said, Arjuna is calling two names to Krishna, right? Again, when he calls specific name, there is a purpose, there is a relation for that verse, right? So when he is calling Janardana, Janardana means that one who is the object of, who desires the ultimate benefit. So that's why Arjuna is saying, Krishna, you are Janardana. You desire my ultimate benefit. So tell me, what is my ultimate benefit for me? Yeah. And Keshava is, one who is controller of both Brahma and Shiva, right? He's the controller, supreme controller, Krishna. So Arjuna is, kind of glorifying Krishna and also asking him that Ghore Mam, Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam. Ghore means, very ghastly warfare. Why are you indulging me in such a, warfare thing, right? So, and when he says that if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work, we just saw, right? What reference of Krishna doing intelligence is, Krishna is referring to fight, but Arjuna's definition of intelligence is renounce, right? Not to fight. So the second shloka, Arjuna again, he in the let me just go back to the first shloka again. So in the first shloka, Prabhupada mentions in the purport that when Arjuna is asking this, there is a mindset of, in general, we also see mindset of people that, that sometimes they think that Krishna consciousness is nothing but renunciation, renouncing activities. You will see many people commenting, oh, why are you doing this now? They have a mindset that they are going to leave everything, right? If they are doing bhakti. Because in general, what we see, unfortunately, in this yuga, that people have the mindset of two extremes, either complete bhoga or tyaga, right? So that's why they assume that spirituality or Krishna consciousness is complete tyaga, right? That is retiring from everything, renouncing everything. But Prabhupada, he highlights that when it comes to tyaga for a Krishna conscious person, the tyag here is, it doesn't mean renouncing activities, but it is, tyaga is renouncing being indulged in material activities, right? It doesn't mean that it's like, rather than indulging, in material activities, engage yourself into Krishna conscious activities. So tyaga is not activities, renunciation, but rather, it is more into driving you towards do more Krishna consciousness. Okay, so that is one thing from the purport which I just wanted to bring it up. And the second shloka, yeah, Arjuna just, again, he he kind of, he says to Krishna very clearly that he's bewildered, he's confused, right? And therefore he's asking Krishna that please tell me what is most beneficial for me. In so Arjuna is asking this question so that Krishna can, giving the platform for Krishna to explain overall, Nishkam Karma Yoga in detail, right? Because in last chapter we touched base, right? We understood what it meant. But how exactly? Because this is the main path, right, which can take us to devotional service. So Krishna is gonna explain it very clearly in this chapter. Yeah, more stressful. Yeah. So yeah. So overall, the thought here is that for Arjuna, um, when he's talking about action and renunciation, he's talking about he's thinking that karma yoga, which is action, right, and jnana yoga is renunciation. So these two paths are two different paths. But Krishna will now clarify to Arjuna that these two are not different paths of, it is rather these are two paths in the same yoga ladder. These are two different rungs of the yoga ladder, right? These are not two different paths, but these are two rungs of the same yoga ladder, and with the same goal. So the ultimate goal of Gyan yogis is also to achieve Krishna, and Nishkam Karma yogis is also to achieve Krishna, right? So the path is not different. They are the same, same level, but same goal and different rungs of the same ladder, yoga ladder. Yeah. So Arjuna overall thought of Krishna consciousness, or Buddhi yoga, right? Uh, as something like retirement from his active life, right? And he was thinking that if I go to forest, practice penances and austerity in a secluded place, that is Krishna consciousness. And to this, Krishna is explaining in detail that it is actually working in Krishna consciousness is what is activity which we need to do, right? So moving further, which was the second section covering from verse 3 to 9. This is the section we'll cover today. So in response to Arjuna's questions as whether to work or renounce, yeah, Krishna will now describe Nishkam Karma Yoga, right? And Nishkam Karma Yoga is working, activity is there, action is there, yeah, with knowledge, but with detachment, right? Detachment to results, right? That is Nishkam. So Krishna tells Arjuna that for Arjuna, Nishkam Karma Yoga, performing the action, without any expectation of, without any attachment to results, is better for him than Jnana Yoga, right? Which is renunciation. Now, this is the third shloka. And Hari Krishna ji, will you be able to read it? The Sanskrit one and English?
Yeah, Mataji. Lokeshmin Dvivida Nishta Pura Prokta Maya Nagu Jnana Yogena Sankyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical, philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service.
Thank you. Thank you. So, right. So now we saw in second chapter, Krishna explained about this analytical study, right, which was called as Sankhya Yoga or Jnana Yoga, right? And there was a shloka, I think it was 2.39, where Krishna so we know that from 2.31 to 2.37, yeah, Krishna explains the Sankhya Yoga, right? And then from there, he starts with Sakam, right? And then Nishka in second chapter. That was the flow, right? So in this 2.39 shloka, in second chapter, 39 shloka, thus far, there Krishna, we saw that he explains there, he finishes the analytical study, explanation. And then he starts with fruitative results, which is Sakamka, right? And then, once we covers the Sakam Karma section, we see that in the words there is, when he switches to Nishkam Karma, he highlights, that if, now so far I have explained you about Sankhya Yoga, which is analytical study, and then Sakam Karma, which is doing the work with fruitative actions, right? So fruitative results. So Now, when he started explaining Nishkam Karma Yoga, he highlights that to Arjuna, that this Nishkam Karma Yoga information, what I'm going to give you, the knowledge, this knowledge can free you from the bondage, right? From the bondage of work, right? So here also we see that Krishna is highlighting Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam, Karma Yogena Yogina, right? So in this verse, we see that Krishna is explaining these two kind of process, right? Namely Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga, right? So we need to understand when we are talking here about Gyan Yoga and Karma Yoga, right? It's not just Gyan or Karma, right? Yoga is what? Connecting ourselves with the Super Soul, with Krishna, right? So if we just have karma, we will just do actions, right? But we have to link our actions with Krishna. That is Karma Yoga. And similarly with Jnana Yoga. So just having the Jnana, just having the information is not enough. We need to have Jnana Yoga, which is linking it to Krishna, right? Only then it is considered to be part of the yoga ladder. So the prerequisite for a Gyan Yogi, right, well, is the main thing is they should have purification of heart, right? When we talk about purification of heart, what that means they are less attached, right? They have the lesser tendency to enjoy material matter, right? That's why they are more qualified on that one. So we have to always remember when we are talking about Gyan Yogis, the prerequisite, the main thing for them to reach that level is to have purification of heart. Yeah. And there are, some class of people we see who perform this so-called Sankhya Yoga or this analytical study, but they are doing it as a speculation because they are not attaching that yoga piece, they are not, so they are more inclined to just read some philosophy, and then speculate, and they try to, and Jnana Yogis, overall, they try to, one of the things we'll see further and further shlokas, when it comes to Karma Yogi and Jnana Yogis, they eventually, because they are so much into the, the knowledge aspect of it, they try to understand the philosophy, but the main, limitation here is they try to do it on their own. Yeah. And they try to speculate, they try to understand, but they try to do it on their own. Yeah. Without, a support of a spiritual master or, keeping Krishna inside. Right. So that's why we see that Jnana Yogi's advancement to reach to Bhakti Yoga is difficult. Yeah. The Jnana Yogis can also go to Krishna. That is their ultimate goal. We need to understand that. But they may take several lifetimes, much more lifetime, many lifetimes than the Karma Yogis to reach their ultimate goal. And we see, in 7th chapter there is a shloka, where Krishna says that Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanvan Mam Prabodhante Vasudevam Sarvamidhi Sa Mahatma Sudurya. So there will be many lifetimes, they take to just understand that Krishna, Vasudevam Sarvamiti, that Krishna is the whole and soul. That is the goal. Yeah. Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. It is very rare to find such an image. Yeah. So for Arjuna, Krishna is asking to take, Karma Yoga, which is the other class of men, right? So first class here, Krishna is saying they are inclined to understand empirical and philosophical speculation. And what is the other class? Devotional service, which is Karma Yoga, right? So these are the other class of men. And we see this in 2nd chapter, 61st verse, which was really the important verse where Krishna uses mat paraha for the first time, which was like tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita mat paraha, right? So that verse highlighted that we have to depend on Krishna, mat paraha, right? Entirely on Krishna. Yeah? And in this way, we can control our mind and senses, right? So we need to understand that both these yoga ladders, they are rungs of the same ladder with the same goal, right? But um, for Gyan yogis, it may take many more lifetimes to reach that goal because of the speculation aspect, because they are striving on that one, right? And the other process, which is it's like it is like an indirect process, right, which takes you gradually to Krishna. But the other process is direct, connecting with Krishna, which is Krishna consciousness, right, through Nishkam Karma Yoga, and directly it takes like a lift. We saw the lift system also in our second chapter, Yoga Nara. So it is like a lift, takes you to Krishna, to Bhakti Yoga. Yeah. So of these paths, Krishna is telling that the Krishna consciousness path is better. Yeah. Because while we are doing the activities of Nishkan Karma, the main thing is with the activities we are doing, it starts purifying our senses, right? We have the knowledge also. We try to understand philosophically what we are doing now. At the same time, we practice it through chanting, reading, and hearing. So the purification of heart process has already started, right? So the activities which we perform for Krishna consciousness itself gives us purification. Yeah. So with this, that understanding that we are not this body, but we are soul, right? We take that shelter of Krishna, right? And how do we know that? Through the direction of Krishna and through spiritual master, right? We perform that devotional service. But Jnana yogis depend on themselves, not on spiritual master or Krishna. So it becomes difficult for them, and a bit later, elongated path to achieve Krishna, right? So that's why it is very important, no matter where we are, we connect to God, Krishna, right? Only when we perform actions or our prescribed duties, connecting to Krishna, that yoga, that connection should be there. Yeah. Only then our mind and senses will be purified, right? So when they are, when the mind and senses get purified, only then, you can take the path of renunciation, right? Because when you are taking the path of renunciation, you will not get attracted to sense gratification, right? So your focus is only Krishna. So that is also, so once you are free from this material stuff and from sense gratification, you can take the path of renunciation. And this was the process which was followed in Vedic culture, that there was a gradual evolution, like we discussed the yoga ladder, gradual evolution from karma kanda to sakam karma, and then to nishkam karma, then jnana yoga, so there was a gradual elevation. But now, with us being in Kali Yuga, where we don't have time to go through this gradual process, because the lifespan of Kali Yuga people is also less. So the only remedy is to directly take the approach, directly take the process of bhakti rather than going this gradual. Right? So overall, Krishna is highlighting Arjuna not to do karma, but to do karma yoga, right? In Krishna. So karma yoga is doing it for Krishna, Nishkam. Okay, so any questions so far? We'll go a bit more on this jnana and karma aspect. It is important for us to understand. So maybe towards the end of this section, I'll check if any of you have questions. But if you do have, please drop it in the chat box. Yeah. So just moving further, so we need to understand that both of these, like we understood, it's the different levels, right? Different rungs of the same yoga ladder. So they are interdependent, right? They are like the second point says here, they are rungs of the ladder, of the same ladder, with ultimate goal to achieve love for Krishna, right? Bhakti, right? The philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth come into Krishna consciousness. So Jnana Yogi is also, like I said, ultimate goal is to come to Krishna consciousness. But it's just that it takes much longer. Right? And when we say interdependent, see, Karma Yoga is dependent on Jnana Yoga because we need to have the knowledge, right? To understand that we are not this body, this soul. Right? And Jnana is dependent on karma also in either ways. So unless we don't practice these activities, what is the value of that philosophy? If we just sit in this class and learn and we don't have our spiritual practice in place, chanting, reading, hearing, performing Krishna consciousness activity. Will that only philosophy help us to transform? No, right? So these both are interdependent to each other, right? It's just that Prabhupada in the purport has put the comparison like for religion and philosophy, right? So this statement, we will go through this a bit in the next slide to make it more clear. But Jnana and Karma Yoga, he has put it as religion versus philosophy, some on those lines. So religion without philosophy is sentiment or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So what are we trying to say here? Religion without philosophy. Now, let me give you an example maybe of, we see that since childhood, we all must have seen so many rituals performed, right? As a tradition in our family, right? But when we try to deep dive to understand the clarity, maybe sometimes we get the answer for the questions and sometimes we don't. And sometimes the answers are just like, it's being followed, but nobody has a thorough rationale for it. So that is like we are following that religion, which is rituals, without philosophy, without understanding. Similarly, in Bhagavatam, we have that example, right, where we all know the pastime of Krishna with Govardhan Hill, right? So he lifted, and why did he do that? Because Nand Maharaj was performing Indra Puja, right? And Krishna asked Nand Maharaj, why are we doing this? Because it's not mentioned anywhere in Vedas. So Nand Maharaj said that because it has been done since ancestors, right? And there Krishna stopped him performing that, and Indra Puja was then moved to Govardhan Puja, right? Why? Because Krishna wanted to establish, right, what he says in Gita also in 18th chapter, that Sarva Dharman Parityaj Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja, means abandon all these rituals, just take shelter of me, right? So he himself, when he he established this fact as well, and so it's a good example that it's more sentimental, right? When we do things, there is no some philosophical understanding is not. And what is our main philosophical understanding which we should have? That we are not this body and we are soul. And what is our duty? It is what we always say, Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Krishnera Nityadas. So we are the servants of Krishna. So we are his servants, eternal servants, right? So that's why having that philosophical understanding, with that philosophical understanding, if we perform the religion, which are the rituals, then it causes impact, right? It may. And the other part of this is philosophy without religion is mental speculation. Now, philosophy, so someone is coming up with some theory, some philosophy, without really having a reference to it, right? It was similar to, again, referring this to Bhagavatam story, where I don't know if any of you know, but there is a Brahmana story there, where Krishna and Balram and his friends are in the forest. They are playing, and they were tired. They were hungry. So because Krishna's friends were hungry, Krishna said them. Krishna asked them to visit to the close by Brahmana's house. Yeah, there was a Brahmana house. Now they were and Krishna alerted them. Just make sure that you don't tell that I have sent you. But maybe Balram sent you, because everybody knew Balram was the son of Kshatriya, right? He was the son of Vasudeva. But Krishna, everybody thought that he was, of course, though he was the son of Nanda, which is so. Krishna, the friends of Krishna, they went to Brahmana's house. They asked for food, they explained, them that we are here and Krishna is also here, so we would like to have food, to quench our hunger. And the Brahmanas were busy doing sacrifice, and they did not. They said no, we are performing sacrifice. So they said no to offer. They're performing yagna, but they did not want to, where they were offering to yagna. And who is the yagnapati? Krishna, right? So Krishna is in front of them, but the Brahmanas did not want to feed Krishna, but they were busy in doing that ritual, which was sacrifice. And at the same time, when the friends went back and told to Krishna, Krishna sent them this time to Brahmanas' wives. And when they visited Brahmanas' wives, as soon as they got to know that Krishna is in forest, they left everything, they took the food, they went, they fed Krishna. Right? So this is difference between bhakti, which the Brahmana's wife had, versus to dry philosophy. So the Brahmanas were, really, they were the experts in philosophy, right? So, but they couldn't, that bhakti part, because they did not link it to Krishna, right? So similarly, when we spoke also before that when we talk about Vedas, they similarly cater for all different categories of people in this world, right? From Vedas have the sections where from the from karma kanda people, how to bhakti, that level as well. Why? Because it gradually uplifts the section which talks about all the karma kanda people. Why? Because Vedas help them to uplift slowly, to move into further progress into the yoga ladder, so that they can ultimately reach bhakti. There's a gradual upliftment through these. Okay? So gradual upliftment to even understand the essence of Vedas. And what is the essence of Vedas? We know that. It's to know Krishna, to perform bhakti. Right? So therefore, philosophy without religion, which is practice, just philosophical understanding, is of no use as well. Right? These both go hand in hand. We need it. Okay. So just putting a bit more of understanding on this. So spiritual science, we know it is universally people, we see it everywhere being followed. What is philosophy? Studying the scriptures, understanding the essence. Religion is what? Practice, right? What do we practice? Chanting, reading, hearing, deity worship, and other services. Sentimentalism is what? I like doing this, so I do it. Like people go to temple. Why? Because I like doing it. I feel nice. That is, some people say, right? Similarly, if they are going to a movie, also they come out of the movie and say the same thing. Oh, I liked it, right? So they can. It's just about making themselves feel good. That's why they visit, right? And when you are doing something just because your sentiments are being addressed, it might not last long, because change is permanent even within us, right? So we might not be the same. So the sentiments might not be. So this will not last long. So we need to have a thorough philosophical and religion both. Fanaticism is what? There are some people who mentally who are more very strong, saying that what they think, what they are doing is the only thing which is right? So they don't want to listen to anything else. Yeah, they don't want to hear the philosophy. They just want to say that no, this has been followed and it is right. Yeah, they are fanatic about it, right? So when there is religion, when you practice something without philosophy, right, that is sentimentalism. But that sentimentalism, when it increases its level, it can even go to fanaticism, saying that only my way is the right. That is the attitude. Okay. And then speculation, we know what it means, right? So anybody can come up with something. Yeah. But how do you confirm it if it is not in our scriptures, right? So if we practice both, if we have both religion and philosophy together, that causes transformation within us, right? And we'll compare this, with material, with the science, let's see. So material science, it's experimental. And spiritual science, when we practice spiritual science, we experience it within, right? So it is experiential, right? Now, when we have this both combination, both are required, both are interdependent, both religion and philosophical understanding. Both is important for us to really see the transformation within us. Otherwise, we are just doing things for the sake and we are not getting purified. Okay. So for us to realize that higher transformation within ourselves, we need both religion and philosophy. Okay. Now, why higher transformation? Because why are we saying it higher? Because it deals with things beyond this material matter, right? We are talking about soul and consciousness. And transformational, why? Because it involves inner transformation of heart, right? Experiencing the higher reality, the higher taste developed, which we learned in second chapter, right? So to just make this follow more easily, for a science, what do we have? There are two components, right? One is someone comes up with a theory, right? They observe something and they come up with a theory, right? What is the other component to establish that theory? Can somebody say? How would we establish that theory?
Proof.
Yeah. So how we do it? Through experiment, right? Through experiment, we get that result and then we establish the theory, right? We need an experiment to confirm, to approve or to disapprove that theory, right? Similarly, let's come material science to spiritual science, spirituality. So in spirituality, theory is, can somebody say?
Philosophy.
Yes. Theory is philosophy and experiment is?
Chanting.
Religion.
Right. So yeah, aspects of that. So it is religion, right? So religion is nothing but practice, which involves what I said, chanting and all of the practices, right? So thus, we need to understand philosophy needs to be substantiated by religion and vice versa. So religion also needs to be substantiated by philosophy. They both go hand in hand. Only then we see that higher transformation within us, right? And that's why we say spiritual science is experiential, right? We cannot just say we want to learn Gita and we don't want to apply it to our day-to-day life. Then we will not see the transformation with us. Nor we can say we'll keep doing it because it has been done, since some time, since our tradition, but we don't want to understand what is behind it. Even that will not help us to transform, right? So these both really go hand in hand. Okay, so I do realize we are running over, but okay. So let me just try to catch up. We have 5 shlokas more, and then we'll open the floor for questions. So this shloka, Jyoti ji, will you be able to read the Sanskrit and English?
Sure. Na karmana naramba na shakarmya purushochyate na cha sanya sanadeva sindhi samadhi gacchate. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Bhagavad Gita 3.4. Shri Krishna.
Thank you. So Krishna is highlighting here that just by not working, you will not be free from the cycle of reactions, right? People think that if I don't act, then there will be no reaction, right? No action, no reaction. Simple logic, they think, right? So, but but people also have a mindset that when we talk about renunciation, like I spoke, spirituality is just giving up something, everything, everything. And if you give up everything, you will be free from desires. You will not have any desire. Because when we desire something, we saw, right, that whole chain happens. You contemplate, you desire, and then it ends up into wrong action. So they think that if we don't desire something, then there will be no distress, and then you will be, and that's what they think about giving up everything. Right? But we also saw in the last chapter, Krishna highlighting this again in the last chapter, in the second chapter, that our famous verse, Karmanyavadikaste. So in the end, he says, Nate Sangustva Akarmani. So he highlights there that, our soul's most inherent nature is to be active. Okay? And Krishna is highlighting that here again. Just by running away from work, will not be free from reactions, or nor will get the perfection, right? So Krishna is telling Arjuna, for example, Arjuna is renouncing everything and going to the forest. And he thinks he will not do any action, so no reaction, right? But Krishna is telling Arjuna that, if you go to the forest, renunciate, you see that, the other sannyasas there, they are collecting food, alms, and there is a dispute there, between the sannyasas or between a householder to give the alms or something. Then Arjuna, because his inherent nature is being a Kshatriya, he would like to protect the law and order, right? And he would like to protect and sort that issue. So he will immediately, turn into his Kshatriya nature, yeah, because the tendency of that Kshatriya still remains with Arjuna, right? So he will react, yeah. He cannot bear to see issues there because he wants to have the law and order. So in that case, even after renunciation, if we think that, things will be no reactions, then that is not practical. Because for somebody to go in seclusion and remain in seclusion, what is mainly needed? The transformation of heart, right? You have to really, like we learned, have your heart very purified. There is no attachment, nothing to this material things. Yeah, your focus is only to progress in Krishna consciousness by doing the activities. Yeah, otherwise, if there is no transformation and you immediately take a renunciation, you cannot sustain yourself, to do something which your inherent nature is to do. You will tend to do nonsensical activities in the end, because that drive is still there with it. It's not fully pure yet, right? And we see that in further, how Krishna is highlighting something called as premature renunciation. If when you're not ready, you're not there yet, not purified yet, then taking renunciation would be premature renunciation. Yeah. And why that? Because your heart is not purified yet, right? And we see that in today's society, from the picture you can guess, right? So we come across many people who are taking up renunciation, but we see that they perform certain activities which is not right? So, and that such sannyasas, it is nothing but a social disturbance, because they are not setting up the right examples, right? It causes just social disturbance, right? And according to some philosophers, they think that just adopting sannyasa and retiring from these activities, they can immediately go to the level of Narayana. They become Narayana at once, as good as Narayana, right? So just taking a pronunciation and becoming as good as Narayana, this is their thought process. And we know very clearly by now that we can never be equal to Narayana, right? Because we are his servants. That is our inherent nature. And Krishna clearly disapproves this principle. And Krishna is calling such people as pretenders here. Yeah. So there are many pretenders, whom you might come across, who show it's like show bottle, right? They perform some meditation, quite a lot of meditation in front of you. They have some powers, but they are not fully purified, right? So their mind is still dwelling on sense enjoyment, sense gratification, right? They might also speak some dry philosophy, right, in order to have more followers. Yeah. But according to this verse, they are the greatest cheaters. Yeah, that's what Krishna is saying. Krishna is condemning them completely. Yeah. And in this shloka, we see why. Krishna says that everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. Right? Now we can correlate this verse with that picture behind. Can somebody tell me what are these kids doing?
They are playing a game.
Yeah, so what?
Like
It's a sack race,
sack race.
right?
Hmm.
Thank you. So they're playing a sack race, right? And they are within the sack. Now, when they're within the sack, will they have a bit of restriction to move,
Yes.
right? So when they are in the sack, they might not be as fast as when they are outside the sack, right? Because this sack is restricting their activity. Right? Now, Krishna is saying here that this body of ours is just like this sack. And in fact, when we are outside this body, we are much more active when we are outside this material body and when we get our spiritual. Yeah, because some class of people think after this birth, after that, there will be no activity for soul, but we have to understand that in fact this body within this material world is limiting us to perform the amount what we could outside this body in spiritual. So action, basically, Krishna is saying here in this shloka, action is very natural to us. It is our intrinsic nature of a soul, that we are active, right? So the way we run in a sack, we are limiting our capacity to run. Yeah. And when we are outside, we are faster. Similarly, for our soul, this body is a burden. It can be much more active when it is outside this body. So, in this body, within this body, we are controlled by this modes of material nature. And of course, these 3 modes of material nature will go in more detail in further chapters of Gita. So, we cannot refrain, only when we dovetail our desires rather than for our sense gratification, we dovetail that to Krishna conscious activities. Yeah. Then the effect of the modes of material nature, we'll see how much varied it is, right? So, and here he says the mithyachari, they are called, that's what the word in the shloka. So, one who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called as a pretender. So, outside, this person is different, renunciate, but inside the mind is still dwelling on the sense objects, right? And Krishna is calling such class of people as the worse, which are pretenders, which we see mostly in this yuga, which is expected, right? Now, just a bit more on this mithyachari, there are different grades here, yeah? So what are these mityacharis or pretenders? Externally, they have a garb of a devotee, but internally, they have an impure heart, and it is more on searching for objects for sense gratification, not for Krishna gratification, right? Now, we are just dividing it into 4 grades. So grade 1, externally, it's a garb of devotee, and internally, complete transformation of heart. Yeah. So these are really pure devotees, right? So they are grade 1, first grade, top. Yeah. Grade 2 are those, externally they are garb of devotee, and internally they are making sincere attempts towards changing, towards transformation, following the regulated practices, doing Krishna conscious activities. Yeah. And maybe most of us fall in this, right? We are trying to have a Krishna consciousness within us, right? So grade 3 are externally garb of devotee, and internally they do things, but there is no change at all. Yeah, there is no transformation. And then the worst grade, the 4th grade, is the one which Krishna highlights. It is externally garb of devotee, and internally mind still dwelling on sense objects and continuing to do the sinful activities. Yeah. So with that said, we'll just come to the next shloka, where Krishna compares. So far he spoke about pretender. Now he's speaking about a person who is better than him. So Reshma ji, will you be able to read it? You're on mute, but I cannot hear you. No, I think there is an audio problem. Okay, until it gets fixed, maybe we'll move to Trupti ji. We'll go to you.
Okay, ma'am. Yastava indrani manasanyam yara bhati arjuna कर्मन्द्रियाहि कर्म योगम अस्कत साविष्य विषयस्यते. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Thank you, Mataji. And I'm sorry if I've read wrong.
No, it was
words
fine.
in
Thank
Sanskrit.
you. Thank you. So,
Thank you.
So Krishna, like I said, he's comparing, right? And he's now concluding that better than such premature or artificial renunciation, it is better to perform your activities even though you are performing it imperfectly. Yeah, where we see a sincere attempt, to try to control the senses, and through which the mind comes into control, and we begin that activities towards Krishna consciousness. So better than that false renunciation, we should sincerely try to control our active senses by our mind and begin our karma yoga activities, which is without attachment to results, right? So that by far is, Krishna is saying, superior. Okay, so he's telling this particularly to Arjuna because he was more into the renunciation mode, right? So he's explaining Arjuna, for him it is better that he continues. Yeah, it is superior, right? And for Arjuna, it might be the activity here we are highlighting is fighting, but for us it is our prescribed duty, right? Our day-to-day activities. So performing that, with the consciousness to dovetail that to Krishna, keeping Krishna in center, that will help us. For Arjuna it is fight and performing his prescribed activities. Our prescribed activities in our day-to-day life are different, but to dovetail that, to keep Krishna in center, to continue with Krishna consciousness, keeping that consciousness in mind, that is what we have to apply in our day-to-day, right? And we see an example here, right? We have given this example, I think, in our 9 sessions as well, which is Alfred Ford, right? So he is, we all know him, right? And he is, we have many such examples of sincere people, right, who perform their prescribed duties, at the same time they perform it for the satisfaction of Krishna or Vishnu, right? So they and that's what Krishna is saying, a sincere person who performs his activities, and works for satisfaction of Krishna is far better than the person who is that pretender, who is more of showboating, right? And who cheats the innocent person. So we have to, like in the example of Alfred Ford, he continues his, we know he must be so busy. We are saying we are so busy, right? We can see that Arjuna, being such a, he used to rule the whole earth. So he must be so busy, right? We saw several such examples, right? So in today's world, we can correlate with Alfred Ford. He must be so busy, but, working, having that consciousness is the main thing, right? We learned it's not the action, but the consciousness which should drive. So yeah, so that consciousness, keeping that and continuing our spiritual endeavor, that will satisfy Krishna, right? So almost there to the last, I think we are 12, yeah. So we'll have just last 2 shlokas left now. So 8th shloka, Krishna finally says that perform your prescribed duties. Yeah, duty. For doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work, right? So I think it's clear, right? So Krishna is desiring that Arjuna should just perform his duties as a Kshatriya, right? And several times we think that these empirical pretenders, we need to understand that this path of renunciation, it's anybody who goes to that level, it should be taken to give to society, not to take from society, right? The path of renunciation is not like taking donations, taking alms, taking the daily needs from people in the society, but rather there was somewhere where I read that Prabhupada, he mentions or he highlights that Hare Krishna people, they are renunciates, but they are not lazy. They are not here depending on the society, but rather they're here to give to the society more Krishna consciousness, right? They are not lazy. They go out for donation for that, and they the amount, you see that they can, it's not that they're going out to collect donations so that they can eat and sleep in the ashram aram se, right? They work, in fact, much more harder than the materialistic people. They sleep less, they eat less, and they work, they collect donations to spread this Krishna consciousness to, the amount of activities they do, right? So he himself, Prabhupada, he used to sleep 2 to 3 hours in the day and rest just working on how to spread the Krishna consciousness. So he himself set that example as well. So this renunciation, ideally, it should be taken basically when, it is to give to the society, Krishna consciousness, not to take from the society, right? So that is very important for us to know. And this is the last shloka. I am not sure, Reshmaji, do you want to try again or? Yeah, there's still, I can see you speaking, but I cannot hear you. Okay, I'll go ahead with this then. So this is a very important shloka because Krishna, for the first time, we are mentioning yagna, sacrifice. Yeah, and Krishna is saying that do it for me. Okay, so yagnarthartarmano anyatra loko yam karma bandhanaha tadartam karma kaunteya mukta sanga samachara. So work then as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material. Yeah. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. And in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. Yeah. So we are seeing here the word yagna for the first time. Right? So, just like we say yoga, right? Yoga has a form and a principle. What is the form? We sit in different asanas, right? And what is the principle of yoga? To connect to super soul, right? So similarly, yagna also has this form and a principle. Yeah, the form is like we offer so many things, right? Ahuti, right? And the principle is what? Sacrifice. So we'll see in further slides how performing the sacrifice, performing these sacrifices helps us to, this is actually our prescribed duty, performing sacrifices. It's not literally just yagna, but also, like we know in Kali Yuga, the sacrifice which is asked is chanting, right? It's the main sacrifice. So the word sacrifice, we need to use it in the right context, right? So what we, everything is Krishna's, right? So whatever we tend to enjoy, right, for sense gratification, we have to start, giving it to Krishna as well, yeah, as a sacrifice. For example, we are preparing food, right? We are offering bhoga, right? It's a sacrifice. So then, say we earn salary, we get monthly salary. So part of it, dedicating it to Krishna consciousness activity. That is sacrifice at that level. It's like a teacher's job is to teach, right? But the teacher teaching also Krishna consciousness activity. Krishna consciousness is sacrifice. So anything, if we dovetail our, our desires, and if we dovetail our activities to Krishna, that is, will help us to get purified at heart, right? And will be always free from bondage. That will help us gradually uplift such that we are not attached. We are not bonded to this material. Yeah. If we just perform our prescribed duties, and this is more explained in this slide there. So yeah, offering prescribed duties to Lord Vishnu or Krishna without personal desire is actually yajna or sacrifice, without personal desire. Okay. Now, what do we learn from Vedas? That yajno vai Vishnu, right? In other words, the same purpose is served when one performs prescribed yagnas or directly serves Lord Vishnu, right? So Krishna's name, quality, form, all are, same. So therefore, one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work done in this material material world will be a cause of bondage. For both good and evil work have their reactions, and any reactions bind the perform. So we learned this before, that be it good actions or bad actions, we have to take undergo this birth and death cycle again. We have to take birth again to face the reactions of those good actions and bad actions. So it's just not bad, but also good, right? To face the consequences or the results of the good action we performed in this life, we'll have to take birth again. So we need to dovetail it to, Krishna, right? Perform it for Krishna. That will help us not to get bonded, right? Not for self, yeah, good, but for Krishna. Yeah. So as we perform these prescribed duties, what happens gradually? There is a purification of the heart. Once there is a purification of heart, the real knowledge is awakened, right? That we are the eternal servants of Krishna, and we have to keep Krishna in center of anything we do. Yeah, it's not like we have to, yeah. Then let me go through the next point. So Krishna thus suggested that working for the Lord without desire for results, which is Nishkam Karma Yoga, is better for Arjuna. But if you are not free from desire for the results of action, then you should still perform actions, yeah, with desire, which is karma kanda, rather than giving up actions completely, right? So it is like same thing what we went through in the second chapters. So first step is, what Krishna is saying here is, try not to expect results, so without desire for results, perform your activities. Yeah. Now, if we think it is difficult, right? If we think that this is not, in there yet, we are not there yet, then what Krishna is saying is, then, get those results. Yeah. Still perform, fulfill your desire, perform, but offer it to Krishna. Yeah. If we are not free from desires, then you should at least perform. Don't think about inactivity. It is completely condemned here. Still perform your actions, rather than giving it. Performing actions and then slowly uplifting ourselves. Karma kanda is do the Vedic rituals, Vedic thing, but with an expectation of result, right? And that's what I said. Vedas gradually uplift you. From karma kanda, it takes you to sakam karma, where you're more focused on Krishna. You do the activities with an expectation of results. Yeah? But we know Krishna is. Right? So it's like gradual upliftment that causes the purification of heart. But if you don't perform any activity, then how can we get purified? Right? So main thing is to continue performing our prescribed duties. Yeah? So overall, Krishna is saying if a person has no material desire and is surrendered to Krishna, then he is eligible for sannyas, for renunciation. Right? We cannot deny our desires. Right? We cannot deny them. But we can definitely, do the duties, try to purify them. Right? So in overall summary, then, liberation or bondage is not determined by one's activities, but one's consciousness, right? In performing those activities. These are really important points for us to understand and try it in our own life, right? Because see, it's not about action. It's about the consciousness behind that action. And this comes up again and again, right? Renunciation is not actually giving up action, but giving up the attachments to the results of actions or activities. Right? It's not about giving up action. It's about expectation, right? And when we are attached to the results we expect, right? So renunciation of activities without necessary knowledge and purification would lead to destruction, on the path of spiritual advancement for that person. And overall, we saw on a wider frame, it is an overall social disturbance, right? So, yeah, it is very important that we work on our consciousness, right? And it is a gradual advancement process. We cannot expect, we did it for so many months or years, and it's mainly on, gradually moving. Right? So this gradual advancement, one of the key things is what we are doing right now, right? So hearing is the main thing, and chanting as well, right? And once we continue that mind control chart, sadhana, right, on chanting, reading and hearing, with full Krishna consciousness, right? Then we'll definitely have that. We can experience that transformation. Less affinity towards material desires and more affinity towards Krishna consciousness, right? And that shows that we are getting more purified in our heart, and our real knowledge is actually awakening. Okay. So with that said, the last 3 slides you all can go through. It's just a summary of all the key aspects, how the flow goes from Shloka 1 to 9. Yeah. Okay. So with that, I just wanted to ask before we open the floor, that we shared the mind control chart last week. Do any of you have any questions around that?